Hey everyone, we're going to get started in just about the next minute here. Thank you all for joining this morning. What's your name? Oh, Booker. Good morning, everybody. How is my audio? Am I coming through okay? Yes, getting thumbs up. All right. I'm so excited to see the response here. Thank you for participating this morning in the inaugural National Conservation District Employees Association webinar series for 2024. That was a mouthful. My name is Mandy Parks. I am your co-host today, along with Sarah Tungy from North Dakota. She's also in NCDA. She's our vice president. There she is. Hi, Sarah. And just some quick kind of intro info, getting ready for today. Wanted to welcome everybody, say thank you, and kind of get right down to it. So we are going to be hosting these monthly. Right now, Sarah and I are just determining when is the best day and time for people, what topics people would like to use to see more of, and we have an employee survey at our website, ncdea.us. If you have not taken it yet, that's a great place to give feedback. And then you can also, we're going to distribute a survey after this workshop. And so that's another great place. Let us know how this went. Is this a good time for you? Is it not a good time? Or do you know people that couldn't attend because of that? We would love to hear that. So if you would like to just put your name, if you don't mind, your name and your email in the chat. We're going to make a list of people attending today so we can email you the materials directly, and also the workshop kind of survey. And then if you would like, you can also be on our mailing list directly for future workshops. See, so the NCDEA, I always start talking about my district, my home district, by asking if people have heard of us, and I get kind of mixed responses. I know when I became a conservation district employee, I was not super familiar with NCDEA, but they're a really amazing organization. And don't just say that because Sarah and I are both on the call today. We do really focus on region-wide and and nationwide, connecting conservation district employees with tools and resources to better deliver conservation on the ground. We do that through a variety of ways. Today is one of those ways. We also connect people just district to district where it makes the most sense. We have region meetings where we put on workshops and trainings, and we just did a great half-day training at February's NACD conference for anyone who is there and part of it. Sarah and I are both great contacts for our region. We can get you in touch with the right person. If you're not sure, you can also go to ncdea.us. That has a region map, and you can connect with your rep that way. But like I said, feel free to email Sarah or me, and we would love to help you and get you kind of looped into the NCDEA universe if you're not already part of that. So today we have two incredible speakers. Anne Brom from Best Best & Krieger is an attorney with BBK, and she's going to be going over best practices for government agencies' social media use. We also have Crystal Valenzuela, who Crystal and I work together here at the Inland Empire Resource Conservation District. Hey, Crystal. And Crystal is our community engagement specialist and social media guru. And is going to be talking about just being more effective and strategic in your use, some really easy ways to do that. So we're going to start with Anne. While Anne's speaking, if you can, Sarah is going to be monitoring the chat. Please drop questions into the chat, that we can have her answer after she finishes. Sarah's going to track those questions, and we will use them during Q&A. After Anne and that Q&A, Crystal is going to start, and then we'll have same thing, drop questions into the chat, and we'll have an interactive Q&A after she's done. We are recording today, so I should have started by saying if you were not okay being recorded. I don't know, most people are black screen anyway, but for some reason you don't want your name on here in a black screen, I need to ask that you leave. It is being recorded. We're going to post it so that we can share with people that couldn't be here today. And then we're also going to be posting both presentations on ncda.us. So now we're going to get into our speakers. So I'm just going to quickly introduce Anne Brom. Anne, I didn't tell you this, but I think people on this call in particular today are going to be excited to know that you were raised on a farm, a dairy farm, and her family still farms and raises cattle, which I don't know how much that comes up in your legal life, but I knew that would be a great way to intro you here.
More than you would think.
But for the purposes of today, Anne is in the municipal law practice group. So she is a really incredible public agency focused attorney, helps with local government, and she really focuses on land use, contracting, and insurance. But she also has done a lot of water and environmental work. And we are so lucky she spoke at our state association conference to rave reviews. And so we invited her to be part of today. And I'm so lucky she can be here. Anne, you should be able to share directly. And so whenever you are ready, take it away. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And good morning, everybody. Let me pull this up and confirm that everyone can see it before we go any further. Okay, is that showing up for everyone? Perfect. Okay, great. So we will get started. So I understand that a number of you are not based in California. So some of this stuff is sort of targeted towards California state law, but the good news about that, I just wanted to say this up front so that you know if you have questions, is that there are these laws that I'm going to talk about, public records laws, record retention laws. There's some form of these laws in every single state. So the law may go by a different name. Like in California, we call it the Public Records Act. So yours may be something like the Open Records Act or something like that. But just know that these are laws that exist in some form or shape in every state. And so what I'm saying will be broadly applicable to you, although I would caution, it's basically in my job description as an attorney to get, specific legal advice as questions come up, just to confirm that your state law is consistent with things that I've talked about today. But in general, I tried to keep it pretty high level and broad so that we can all share that information. Okay, so this is me. I'm an attorney with Best Best & Krieger. Okay, a short overview of where we're going today. So we've moved past the introduction. So next, I'll jump into a brief review of public records requirements generally, and then a brief review of district record retention requirements. Those are two separate things, which I think is kind of a crucial part of the conversation I wanted to have today. And then I will talk about the intersection between social media and record retention. And then, do you need a social media archival service, which is a question that has come up a lot recently based on record retention intersection. So our firm, just a bit about us, we have 12 offices, more than 250 attorneys, and we've been around for over 130 years. So we mostly do public agency law. We represent a number of resource conservation districts. So just, shout out to the firm. And if you ever have any questions, please do feel free to reach out to me directly. I think my contact info is at the end as well. Okay, so our first stop today is going to be public records and social media. So just a quick overview of public records law. And like I said, this is, I'll try to keep it pretty general. Know that this is pulled from California law, but that whatever is the case in your state is probably very similar. So under state law, access to information concerning the conduct of the people's business is a fundamental and necessary right of every person. So in general, I think when you think of records of the district, which includes social media records, as we'll talk about in more depth, know that they are probably public records, right? So if you run a Facebook page for your district, things that you are posting on that Facebook page, and that includes even other people's comments, if you turn on commenting on your Facebook pages or, Twitter pages or YouTube pages, whatever you may have for your district, know that it is probably a public record. So we'll talk about that a bit more in depth, but in general, anything relating to conduct relating to the public's business is going to be a public record. And that means that members of the public can inspect or ask to obtain a copy of those public records. And those are pretty broadly defined, right? So like in California, for example, a member of the public means anybody. It doesn't have to be a resident of your district area. They don't have to fill out any kind of paperwork. They can even be, totally anonymous when they make their request. So think about that pretty broadly. The PRA, though, or whatever it is in your state, the public records law is not a record retention policy. It also did not typically tell you when you can destroy your public records. It's not a privacy policy. It's not a social media or document usage policy. So I always recommend that your district have a robust set of policies, one that, for example, is on public records generally, but also a policy for your records retention and sharing practices, and then a separate policy for social media usage, which I will touch on in a bit more depth as well. And I should say, by the way, Chris, if you wanted to want in at any point on something that I'm talking about,
And I'm so sorry. I am having a little bit of trouble with your audio.
Okay, let me.
I wonder if it's my connection because I'm hosting. I don't know.
You're coming through clear, Mandy, and you might want to turn off your camera. It'll help. Yeah, it'll kind of help. Yeah.
Let me try that. Sorry. And if you need to go back, let me know. Okay, is that any better?
Yes.
Okay, I'll go with camera off for now. And please give me a shot if any questions or okay, perfect. Okay, let me start over again, at least on this slide. And if anyone wants me to go back further, please just let me know. So public records law in your state, whatever name it goes by, it's a public records law, right? But it's not a public record retention policy or destruction policy. It's not a privacy policy. It's not a social media or document usage policy. So what I always advise is that you have a robust set of policies that apply in your district, but not one policy that covers everything, right? You want a public records policy, you want a record retention policy, a record destruction policy, et cetera. So individual policies for the different types of document interactions that you'll need to have. It's a good idea to have separate policies that address those situations, and we'll talk a bit more about that in depth. Okay, so this is pulled from California state law, but again, broadly applicable. Usually any kind of writing, which includes emails, and then typically even things like photos and videos are going to count as quote unquote records. So I've gotten questions before, do I have to turn over photos that we have in response to a public records because it says a writing, right, in the law? But yes, the legislatures in every state typically consider a video, a photo, anything that is a tangible documentation of the district's business that relates to the public, that's typically going to be a public record. So again, just interpret that term pretty broadly. If it ever comes up and you're wondering if something is a record, it probably is. And that, of course, that includes electronic records. So because your public records law in your state applies to electronic records, it's important to know what could be disclosable, especially as it comes to social media, text, emails, and private employee official devices and accounts. So there's sort of this overlap between public business and the private accounts and devices of your trustees or directors, your employees that work for your district. There's case law in California, and I know in other states as well, that basically indicates that if the record relates to public business, it doesn't matter where it's stored. And so that includes employee devices, right? Or if you have a board of directors, that includes your director's devices. If they're emailing and texting on personal devices or accounts about things that nonetheless relate to public business, then those are likely going to qualify as public records. And so it's really important to know the scope of what is a public record and what is not when it comes to things like social media and emails, because it's likely that you will have to turn over those records in response to a request. So in California, we got this case, the San Jose case, in which the city received a public records request that sought emails and text messages sent or received between, council members and staff. And the outcome of this case was essentially that if a public employee or official is using a personal account to communicate about public business, then those are probably going to be subject to public records laws. So just know, I think, as it pertains to social media, just because it's happening on a private account or device doesn't necessarily mean it's not a public record. Typically, what that means is that you're going to have to do a search if you get a request for public record on your social media pages or on your official devices. So any searches for those kinds of records.
And
yes.
Sorry, I think we're echoing.
Everything, you're clear on my end.
Crystal, is it echoing for you or is it just me?
It's echoing here as well.
What could she do?
No.
So sorry, Anne.
No, gosh, I'm sorry. We should have checked this with you before.
No, now it's, I think you're okay now. Crystal, is she okay now?
Trying again. How's that?
Yes.
Is
That's
that better?
good.
Okay, I
Yes.
moved a little closer.
Yes, that's good.
Well, good thing the video's not on because you just see my nose. Okay, please jump in. Let me know if it gets bad again, but I'll try this for now. Okay, so in general, know that even if a record exists on a private social media account or on a private device, it may be a public record if it relates to public business. Although I take heart, not everything in your personal device, your personal email is going to be a public record. Think personal emails, not a public record.
And I'm sorry, you're muted.
How's that?
Better.
Better. Okay, good. Okay, I'll jump in here with the takeaway, and then we'll get a little more in detail in social media. So the takeaway that I just want everyone to be aware of is that your social media records and even perhaps emails, text messages, things like that, they're not going to always be confidential just because they're on a private device or on a private social media account. If you are talking about public business, you should be aware that it is probably or may be a public record. So that's really the takeaway that I want. I know I'm kind of hammering it here, but I think a lot of people are not aware that just because you move a conversation onto a private device or because you're having a conversation with constituents on social media rather than, you know, in a formal email, it could still be a public record. Okay, so we've done a little detour into public records generally. Let's talk about document retention, which was a significant connection with your social media usage and policies. So in general, and this is specific to California, but
And I'm so sorry, it was echoing. It's echoing again. You're clear and then not.
Let me try moving my internet connection to
Okay.
a different connection.
It was crystal clear for a minute there. Sorry.
No, not at all. Let me try this.
And Anne, oh, mine's echoing also. What is that? Okay. Anne, do you want to try it again? Let's see.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, it's crystal clear.
Yes. Clear. Is that better? Okay. Make sure I can still do this. Okay, just confirming that you can hear me.
Crystal clear. Great job. Sorry.
I'm not hearing. Okay. I'm having a little trouble hearing you now. I will.
You are coming through perfectly.
Carry on. Please jump in if you can't hear me for any reason. Okay. Get back to this. Okay, so what I've pulled out here is specific to state law, but in California, but your state has something similar. So just be aware that you should, confirm, but your state statutes will have something similar about document retention. So in general, you have an obligation to retain almost every document that pertains to the conduct of district business. So you don't want to delete or get rid of documents unless you're sure that they are not part of your document retention obligations. And this includes, as we'll talk about, social media records. So in general, you want to keep your documents for the period that's set out in statute. In California, for most records, that's 2 years. But just be aware, most records might be X amount of time. There are always going to be carve-outs and exceptions. So I really recommend getting familiar with your state's record retention laws. Typically, your state legislature will run a program that talks about what you need to keep for how long. They'll typically do a sample record retention and instruction policy. So I recommend getting familiar with those policies and practices so that you always know which documents you need to keep and for how long, and that you can get rid of documents when it's time to get rid of them, which is a crucial part of, especially, when it comes to things like public records requests. If you've gotten rid of the documents that you're entitled to get rid of, then you can respond and say, we don't have that document anymore, right? So it's a streamlining process that you want to keep up with in terms of your document retention and then when you can destroy them. So let's see. This all, it's just sort of a bullet list, but it's relatively specific to California. So I'll just give you the takeaway here, which is there probably are a number of document types that you are never entitled to delete, that you always need to keep permanent record of. So I just would recommend being familiar with what those document types are. That's typically not going to be social media records that you need to keep forever. You usually can get rid of those after some specified period of time. So just be aware there may be document types that you cannot delete even after any amount of time has passed. So once your retention period, whatever that may be, has ended, you can and should destroy documents that you no longer need to keep. As long as you have them in your possession, even if it's just, accidental, oh, we could have deleted them after 2 years, but 5 years have gone, we still have them in our records. Even if you could have deleted them, but you have not deleted them, they're probably going to be, subject to a public records request at that point. So I always advise when your retention period is up, you delete the documents that you can delete. And so another reason why it's really important to have a strong document retention and destruction policy so that you're keeping up with the turnover of, when you can get rid of documents and then you no longer have them in your records. So if you get a records request, you can say that document no longer exists. And as I mentioned, there are typically in your state law, there will be scattered examples of things that you need to keep for X amount of time. They're not usually all going to be in one place. You'll find most of them in one place in your, your legislation, but then there will be some things about employment laws in different areas of your legislation and things like that. So just be aware. The best resource for this kind of stuff is typically going to be your Secretary of State's website. Typically, every state has some kind of a record management guideline document. So that's really helpful. I highly recommend that you pull a copy of whatever records management guidance your state puts out so that you are aware of the general guidelines of how long you need to keep things, when you can delete them, how to delete them. Typically, you need to securely, sort of shred them and make sure that they're properly disposed of. This is just a sample of a policy that I put together for one of my districts. So it talks about, the type of the record category, an example of it, the legal authority for how long it needs to be kept, and then, how long it needs to be kept. And some of them are permanent. So as we'll talk about with social media, it'll fall into the category of some amount of time you need to retain these records in case you get a public records request. But then if you have a policy like this in place, then you'll know when it's okay to get rid of those records. Okay, so here we are, the intersection of document retention and social media. So the U.S. Supreme Court has recognized social media as a modern public square and a space for civic discourse. What that means when it comes to your district is that if you have an official social media page across all platforms for your district, and even maybe your board members have their own social media pages where they discuss from time to time things having to do with your district and constituent business, then those are probably public records. And so what you need to know is that social media records are a little unique because they are stored by a third party, right? So if you have a district Facebook page, your records are stored through Facebook, unless you do something differently. And so you need to make sure that you have a way of hanging on to those records, because if Facebook changed their policies tomorrow and did a scour of everything, from last 5 years to today and just deleted all those records, that's not necessarily enough to insulate you from a claim that you should have retained those records yourself. You can't rely on Facebook policies or Twitter or, YouTube or whatever it may be to retain your records for you. And in fact, there's some concern that records can be manipulated by those third-party companies, right? And so you don't want to be in a situation where you've made a post on Facebook about something relating to the district's business, and then it gets pulled by Facebook and deleted, and then you get a request for it, and you're not able to produce that. So, in general, posts created by your officials or employees that are on social media, published to the district social media websites, are going to be public records. If you allow other parties to post or comment directly on the district social media pages, those can also be public records. So as a bare minimum guideline, I typically recommend not allowing anyone else to post to your accounts. And again, this is why it's a good idea to have a social media policy. I would recommend turning off the ability for, members of the public, for example, to post on your pages. Whether you turn off commenting is up to you. There is some risk associated with that, but as long as you turn it off across the board and you treat everyone equally in turning off the commenting, that's typically fine. What you don't want to do is get into a situation where you've left on commenting, but then you're deleting certain comments, people raising issues that, you know, you don't want them to raise, or they're politically unpopular, things like that. You don't want to be on an ad hoc basis deleting comments. So, you know, reach out directly if you have questions, or we could talk about this in a Q&A about when it's okay to turn off comments, leave comments on, delete comments. But in general, what I'll say is this should all be addressed through a social media policy because they are going to be public records. And so the more, you know, honed in you can kind of get on what you want to be your record of your district business, the better, you know, situation that you'll be in if you ever get a request for records. So not everything posted on your site will be a record. I think, you know, it's kind of important to note that. In general, I would say treat everything posted on your social media sites as records. But in California, for example, the Secretary of State has sort of published this list of times when a social media record may not be a public record. But it's a bit, you know, in the weeds. And I just would say, as long as you're posting on the district's website, it's probably about, or Facebook page or YouTube account or whatever it may be, it's probably you're posting it because it's about district business, right? You're not typically posting, you know, one-off non-district related things on the district's social media page. So if you're posting it on the social media page, you probably should just go ahead and consider it to be a public record. So best practices in terms of retaining your social media records, just in case you do get records requests that have to do with your social media pages. So it doesn't have to be a huge undertaking. There really are two routes that you can go in terms of that intersection of document retention and public records requests in your social media pages. One route that many of my clients have gone down is to comply with those obligations that I've talked about by logging into the agency's social media accounts, you know, once a week or so, printing out all of the posts and comments, and then storing them for the applicable record retention period. You can also do this electronically by taking a screenshot, for example, but when you store your records electronically, there are specific obligations that you have to make sure that those records cannot be manipulated in some way so that you're not replacing them with, you know, falsified records, essentially. So printing them out and storing them in hard copy is one way that my agencies have done that. Alternatively, because that's not, you know, it's not a huge undertaking to designate one person in your office to print out, you know, your Facebook posts and everyone's comments on those posts for the last week, and then sort of, you know, refresh that every week, go back and print out the new stuff that's been posted and add that to your records. Alternatively, though, if you're not interested in doing that, or you've got too much on your plate to have staff members pulled away to do that, then some agencies have chosen to pay for and use third-party companies. A couple examples that I know have reached out to my clients, you know, sort of aggressively trying to get them to use their services are Archive Social or Smarsh. That's an option, right? You can always hire a third-party company to do basically scraping of your social media accounts regularly, and they will retain those records for you. And so if you get a request, then you would reach out to your third-party company and say, I need X Facebook post and all the comments from, you know, March 13th, 2024, and then they would provide that to you. So those are just two options I wanted to make you aware of. What you can't do is rely on the social media site itself to retain the posts. You don't want to get in a situation where you get a request for a Facebook post that you made 6 weeks ago and, you know, you can't find it, it's been deleted. You try to reach out to Facebook to get a copy of it. They say, I have no idea what you're talking about. So, you know, in general, it doesn't have to be a massive commitment, right? But you just need to have some sort of contemporaneous record of what's going on with your social media accounts in the event that you get some kind of a subpoena or a records request, or someone just wants to know what's been going on with those social media pages. Because, you know, as we all know, we are public servants. And so at the end of the day, we want to be as open and transparent with members of the public as possible. You probably run your social media pages to give out public information and, you know, as a public service to members of your community. You want to make them aware of upcoming events and things that the district is doing and outreach. And so it's just kind of a natural extension to say, you know, hang on to those records that you're creating as part of doing the district's business, because it's all kind of a big circle. You know, people want to know what the district is up to. You run the Facebook page. They may file records requests to know what was going on at a certain point in time. So I think if you kind of think of it all as an extension, your social media as an extension of doing the district's business, it becomes a little easier to understand why those documents need to be retained and why you sometimes have to turn them over. And then the last stop here that I just wanted to chat with everyone about, should you have a social media policy directly? Yes. So this would be separate from and in addition to your record retention policy and your public records policy. So there are a ton of examples out there that you can find online. I'm always happy to provide templates, but the short of what you want out of your social media policy is you want to be able to control your messaging. So your policy should cover things like who can post to your social media pages, whether you're going to allow members of the public to comment on your district's posts or not comment on them, comment guidelines. If you set out some rules beforehand and make them clear to the public, such as, you know, off-topic comments will be deleted, or comments that are, you know, making typically like expletives alone are not going to be an example of things that you could do. This is why it's really tricky when you get into content moderation rather than just turning off or on comments. I usually will advise clients reach out to me on a one-off basis. If you're asking about deleting comments, it's not always straightforward. So you might include commenting guidelines in your social media policy, but be aware that's not always enough to insulate you from potential liability for, you know, First Amendment claims, things like that. So usually just turning comments off or leaving them on altogether is going to be the best way to make sure that you're up to date with all the legal requirements. But if it gets bad, right, if you sort of have a couple gadflies that are always posting really heinous things on your social media, then you do have options to moderate content. So I will say that, and hopefully that's not too vague, but you know, I think as we've all seen, there were some cases during the Trump era, right, when he was blocking people on his Twitter page, and the Supreme Court said you can't block individuals when you're a public servant. So I say that just to, you know, let you all know it's not always clear cut. As public agencies, you do have some obligations that go above and beyond your role as private citizens. So be careful about, you know, deleting comments. And then just a few last tips about things you want in your social media policy. As a public agency under federal First Amendment law, your social media sites are categorized as what's called a limited public forum. So that means they're open to the public for discussion and information on certain topics, but not for any and all expressive conduct, right? So you have the right to prevent people from posting to your district's Facebook page their personal videos or their posts, right? Like comments are one thing, allowing people to make posts on your pages is a totally different thing. You can absolutely limit the content of your page to district posts only. And then, as we sort of talked about a bit here, you do have some rights to delete certain types of comments to preserve your status as a limited public forum, but it should be really clearly explained in your policy, and just be aware there are some minefields associated with that. You never want to apply it arbitrarily. So, you know, you want your policy to be really clear. And I think you'll see that if you look up some examples online of a good public agency social media policy, I think it'll be a little more clear what I'm trying to get across about, you know, content moderation. And then alternatively, you can turn off comments altogether. As I've mentioned, there are some pros and cons with that. It might be seen as less transparent than allowing people to comment, but if it gets bad at any point, you know, you sort of have like a group of people or a couple people that are undertaking a targeted operation to comment really awful things on your, you may just consider for a while turning off comments altogether, right? Just to protect yourselves from that. And then we, you know, don't allow non-district affiliated people to post directly to your social media sites. You want to retain your status as a true public agency social media account, right? So don't let your consultants post directly. Just keep it to, you know, the district will run all social media posts through its own, you know, policy and procedures. Okay, final takeaways. Develop and regularly update a legally compliant record retention policy and a separate social media policy. If you're ever unsure how these two things interact, or if you can delete comments, or what you should be doing in terms of printing and saving your records, I recommend that you reach out to your legal counsel, or if you have someone who functions in your office as a records administrator, reach out before you destroy records or delete comments, just because it can be really difficult to get those back, right? So it's much better to get the guidance beforehand than to do it and then wish that you had not done it. And in whatever state you're in, the public records law that applies is going to be an access law, right, and not a record retention law. So if you don't have a document because you destroyed it properly in accordance with a lawful record policy, then that really simplifies your response to public records requests, because you just say that document does not exist, right, because you lawfully have destroyed it under your applicable state law. So those are my final takeaway points. I'm happy to take any questions. This is my contact information, and I hope that you could all hear me clearly at the end there. Sorry for the technical difficulties.
The end was wonderful. It was, or most of it, when you turned off your other mic, Anne, it was perfect.
Okay,
And
good.
it was such a great presentation. I was madly taking notes, and I realized I did have a question about, you know, in California, we call them board members. In other states, they're directors. Sometimes they're called supervisors, but, you know, the people that are, you know, governing your organization. I did wonder, we have two people that are big Facebook users, and I believe that they are regularly like posting on their own Facebook about our district. And so I was curious, like if in your policy, like we should do maybe a policy addressing that with the board, and then maybe extra training with the board, because just based on what we talked about today, it does seem like, you know, that becomes something to be concerned about too, because they're a public figure.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. And I have had in the past with clients trouble with that, right? Because you might even have a situation where the board members are saying one thing at the meeting, and then they'll go on their social media and sort of interact with the public differently. Or I've even had situations where you discuss stuff in closed session, and then a board member has posted about that, not being aware they were not supposed to disclose, you know, confidential
Right.
information. So there's a lot of things that can go sideways with board members, or, you know, your governing officials and social media accounts. I think having that information in the social media policy, and as you're developing the policy, bringing it to your board or your governing body for discussion and consideration and input, right? So that they're aware as you're implementing and getting the policy ready. Oh, they're probably doing this because we've had instances in the past where X thing happened, right? So
Right.
yes, I would say be specific in your policy, call out things that you want your directors to know. Like if you're going to speak truly as a private citizen on an issue of district business, because I think that's important to know too, right? Like your board members or your public officials, they're also members of the community. And from time to time, they truly are taking off their board member hat and speaking as a resident, right? And so that's totally fine. But what the policy might call out is, if you're going to post, you know, on your private account, please be clear about being a private citizen in that capacity, and just say, like, not speaking as a board member, blah, 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 right? So yes, I think putting things like that in your policy is a great idea.
Well, and I think, and by the way, you're getting a ton of kudos, and people are begging for your presentation copy because it's so good. So
Happy
I
to share
just,
that.
you know, don't want you to feel that this was so informative today. And of course, we're going to be posting it on ncda.us, creating an email list of everybody that's provided their email. But I guess for our one board member that I've had informal discussions with after your presentation at CARCD, was he really saw it as positive versus negative, if he is posting about positive things versus negative things. And I told him that is not the line. The line, and especially if he's posting information that he's gleaning from being part of this organization, even if it's not a closed session, that really, you know, based on what I heard you say last time and this time, it triggers you into that like sphere of, it could reasonably interpreted as public information. So then absolutely it becomes searchable and requestable.
Yes,
So,
and I'm gonna go back because I think this is really kind of the test for that. The Secretary of State, in California, and I'm sure in other states too, has said, yeah, you're right. It's not, the line is not like, was this a popular or an unpopular policy that we were talking about, right? But it's like, does it concern the agency's mission or policies or what the agency is entitled under the law to do? So, as a resource conservation district, there are various things that you are obligated to do or that you're authorized to do under the law. And so anything in the sphere of stuff that touches those duties or, authority that you have is probably going to be quote unquote a public record, because that's what your whole job, right, as a governing official or an employee of the district, is to inform the public on those things and to make public policy. And then, as you mentioned too, the second question is the information unique or available elsewhere. If it's stuff that's coming out of board meetings, then it's kind of inherently a public record, right? If you're discussing stuff that you discussed at that level, then it's by like trickle down effect, it's basically, it is inherently public information, right? So yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point.
yeah, it's tricky when it's one thing to give staff guidance. It gets a little tricky when you're talking to your governing body. So I do think this is helpful for getting that conversation started to make sure people understand that's as much a responsibility of good governance as many other things are. And so we're obligated to take that responsibility seriously and maybe do a little bit of a board training on this so that people know even good-natured, well-meaning, things like that become subject and then need to be archived.
Yeah.
That's
And that's
very helpful.
really the benefit of having the policy too, is if you've got it written down beforehand, it's much harder for a board member to feel like they're being targeted or they've done something wrong when you just say, look, we're just applying a policy that applies to everyone the same way, right? So it's not you that we're calling out specifically for, making this post that we wish you hadn't made. It's contrary to what we have in our policy. So
It's
it's
not
much easier then.
it's not that they won't stay off Facebook and they won't listen. It's that we have a policy. That's
It's the
perfect.
policy. Yes, it's like a shield, between your staff and your board members to say, it's not me making this call, right? We've got this policy which you board adopted, right? So
Yes. Oh, this is so helpful. And honestly, the chat is just blowing up with thank yous and people wanting copies, and absolutely we'll get them to everybody. I can't say thank you enough, Anne. You were wonderful.
my
And
pleasure.
we really appreciate the time and sharing your info, and then also, your guidance for people on, you know, good to consult your own attorney, but this is very good guidance no matter what state, what territory you're in. So really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Oh,
And I'll stay on
applause.
through Crystal's presentation. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'll stay on just in case there are questions that I can help with, but I will go on mute. So hopefully there are no more audio issues.
And then you might have to physically stop share. And then so Crystal
Oh,
can
perfect.
start. I'm not, I think. Okay, there we go. And then while Crystal's firing hers up, I am going to introduce her. She is our community engagement specialist here at the IERCD. We didn't even know how badly we needed her until she started. She took us from complete cluelessness into, really an approach highlighting our work, making people feel excited, engaged, and solving one of our biggest problems, which I think a lot of us struggle with, which is making sure that people are aware of us in the general community and know they can come to us and we can assist them. So she's been in her role for 4 years. No, yeah, I think going on her 5th year now. She really works hard to elevate profile recognition. And the wonderful thing about Crystal, which she's going to talk about today, is she has a lot of strategies that don't require, excessive time and/or, help from professionals. These are all things we can do, especially people that are already social media users themselves. So she's got an interactive part of her presentation, and I told her because we're going to be, Sarah and I are also monitoring chat stuff. If you have an issue joining when Crystal shares the join info, Sarah will just be dropping it into the chat also, so you can look there. But she's got some really exciting stuff for us today. Crystal, thank you for being here today and working on a Friday when you normally are Monday through Thursday.
Thank you, Mandy. And I'm assuming everyone can see my presentation. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I'll try to make this as painless as possible with the interactive section. Well, again, good morning, everyone. As Mandy mentioned, my name is Crystal Valenzuela, and I'm the Community Engagement Specialist at the Inland Empire Resource Conservation District, or IERCD for short. I'm sure that everyone on this call is already aware, but conservation districts are known by various names across the country. I think soil and water conservation districts are there, natural resource districts, and even like land conservation committees. Here in California, we go by resource conservation districts. But however, despite these different names, we all share the same goal and target similar audiences, meaning we can all equally benefit from the use of social media. So today I'm going to cover some best management practices, or BMPs, that can really help your district shine in the social media sphere. I'm going to be going over a few different things today. First things first, we're going to explore the importance of maintaining a presence on social media, and I'll address why it's important to have social media for your district in the first place. Then we'll take a brief look at various types of social media platforms that are available for effective outreach and engagement. I by no means have included every single platform in this section, but I added ones that I think you might see most often or might be most useful to you. Then moving on, I'll dive into how setting clear social media goals and objectives will really help you align your social media efforts with your broader organizational objectives. Social media is really fun, like everyone knows that, but we also want to make sure that it serves a meaningful purpose for your district. After that, we're going to walk through a few practical tips and tricks and best practices to help you effectively manage and optimize your channels so that you can maximize your online presence. These are things that I learned kind of the hard way so that you don't have to. And finally, we have that little interactive section at the end, and I am going to prove that there's a social media pro hiding in each and every one of you. You know what looks good, you just don't maybe necessarily know that you know. But that's okay, because I'm confident in each and every one of you. So with all of that said, I hope there's a little something for everyone in this presentation, regardless of skill level, and that we can all walk away feeling a little more confident about our skills. But first, I want to do a quick temperature check to see how everyone's feeling. This is the technology that we'll be using later on in the presentation, so this is a really good time for everyone to kind of try to get acquainted with it. So if you're feeling up for it, please take a moment, take out your phone and scan the QR code on the screen. I'm hoping that COVID has kind of trained us all on how to use these. You can't even really go to a restaurant nowadays without seeing these everywhere to access the menu. But if anyone is having any issues at all, Sarah is going to drop the link in the chat and you can click on it and it works exactly the same. You're going to see a question pop up and just go ahead and click on your answer. This is going to be the same link, the same QR code throughout the presentation, so feel free to keep it open. The questions will change as I change the slides. So I hope everyone is trying to get that started right now. And then as people start, oh good, people are submitting their responses. They'll start to populate this page. And again, don't close that tab just yet. You'll see it change as we change the slides. And if you're having any issues, or if you're even like, if you're tuning in on your phone and you can't scan a QR code because you're already on your phone, you can go ahead and click that link in the chat. So I see that a couple people feel moderately confident. That's awesome. Ooh, some people are feeling pretty confident. That's great. I'll give a couple more seconds if anyone wants to keep trying and put in your responses. Like I said, I'll try to make this as painless as possible. And if you're not feeling up for it, that's totally okay. But I just thought it'd be like a really fun way to make sure that this is more of a conversation rather than just me talking at everyone. Because I hate talking, honestly. All right. I am going to switch to the next question. So keep that tab open. You should see it change right when I change this slide. Here's a new question. Where is everyone tuning in from? Go ahead and zoom in on the map on your screen and click your general location. Let's see where everyone's come. Awesome. Let's see. Ooh, we got Alaska here. No real reason for this. I was just curious. I'll give it a couple more seconds. We got 24, 25 responses. Cool. No fellow Californians here other than Mandy and Anne?
Hey, Crystal, it says, I think the poll is topped off at 25.
Oh,
And
interesting.
so
Okay.
but people are putting in, we've got Arkansas, New York, Indiana, Kansas, Louisiana, Michigan, Maine, Oregon, Idaho, Texas, Rhode Island, Montana, Colorado. Oh my God.
I apologize, everyone. I'm using the free version of Poll Everywhere, and I didn't realize there's a cap on it. That's awesome. Thank you for participating in the chat.
A lot of people.
All right, let's get back to social media. Conservation districts, or whatever you guys go by in your state, are really active agencies that offer numerous benefits to the surrounding communities and environment. However, the amount of visibility or recognition that districts receive don't always match our level of achievements, and that's where social media comes in. Social media serves as a powerful tool for local governments to engage with the community. It allows transparency and accessibility by providing a platform to share information, updates, and announcements that are readily available to anyone that has an account. Community engagement by facilitating direct communication so that you can engage with the community, address concerns, gather feedback, and build stronger relationships with constituents. This is really one of the most important, most significant benefits really right here. And then it also allows public awareness and education so that you can end up with a more informed and more engaged community who are aware of important issues, programs, services, and resources. And also promotion, so you can highlight community events or milestones, programs, achievements. It's really a way to kind of show off what your district is doing. All right, now that we covered that, I did want to spend a few minutes going over the variety of platforms, because each one caters to a different demographic and has a different method of sharing. You don't have to have an account on every single one of these platforms to be effective. You just need to find the combination that works best for you. So first up is Facebook. Facebook has a pretty diverse user base, but it's most notably popular among older demographics. Most Gen Zers and millennials, myself included, have strayed away from this platform over the past decade, but it's still an extremely powerful platform for disseminating information. It allows you to curate content from all over the web for your followers to view. The links, articles, videos, and posts, they don't necessarily have to be original. You can actually share from anyone's public page. So for example, here is us sharing a post, this picture right here, from a different page that's still relevant to our district. So you can share partner highlights and things like that, articles where maybe you may have been featured in the press. You can just drop the link there and it'll pop up on your Facebook. Next up is X, formerly known as Twitter. Their demographic is a little hard to pin down because, recent structural changes to the site, but it has always been, and probably always will be, very popular amongst journalists and celebrities and anyone that is really interested in real-time updates. IERCD doesn't actually have a Twitter, but I can see the value of it if that's what you're looking for. It's really well suited for real-time updates, news, and short-form information, and is great for sharing timely or like really critical information. But really, it's a really fast-paced environment. Things change really quickly there, and if you want to dive into that world, like all the more power to you. We don't have one for IERCD. Instagram is a very visually driven platform. This is where you find a lot of the millennials that have strayed from Facebook. This is where they share personal moments, they follow brands, and they discover visual content. It's all very photo-based. It's pretty popular with people aged 18 to 34, and it's different from Facebook in that it focuses on original photos and videos and graphics, rather than content shared from other sources across the web. But Instagram has this really cool feature where you can cross-post to Facebook. So that's really a 2-for-1 combo if you want to be present on multiple platforms, but don't necessarily have the time to develop content for all of the different ones. And I will say 18 to 34 is just a generalization. There are actually people of all ages here, and it's a really great way for people to get a better picture, literally, of what you're doing in your district. All right, next up is LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a professional networking platform that's primarily used for career development. I see a lot of recent grads on there that use it pretty religiously, but also a lot of older, more professionally oriented people who like to share updates about their career. Either way, it's a great way to share any job opportunities and workforce development programs that you may have. All right. I think it's worth talking about YouTube. This is probably the most time-consuming platform as far as content creation, but it also has the broadest demographic in that it doesn't have a demographic. It really spans across the ages. Everyone has watched a YouTube video. YouTube enables local governments to share longer form video content and can be used to educate, inform, and entertain viewers while increasing visibility and engagement. So if you have the time and the editing skills, go for it. I put a screenshot of a YouTube video that we posted for the district right here. And then finally, I want to touch on TikTok. I know things are kind of up in the air right now about the future of TikTok in America, but I will say that as of right now, it remains an excellent way to engage with younger demographics. This is where all of the rest of the millennials and Gen Zers and even Gen Alpha hang out instead of Facebook. It is less commonly used by local governments, but it's a really fun way to share creative and entertaining content, like behind the scenes glimpses at the district operations or educational videos. And let me see if I can share this video. It might lag as far as visuals, but you'll hear the audio.
We're conservation educators. Of course we pick out every bird we see. Look, there's a northern flicker over there.
We're conservation educators. Of course we have a jar of soil. Did you know that there is more than 1 billion microorganisms in 1 teaspoon of soil? Would you like a jar, Jay?
We're conservation educators. Of course we use reusable water bottles, and you should too.
We're conservation educators. Of course we collect pine cones.
We're conservation educators. Of course we're going to talk about trees. Look at this sycamore over here.
We're conservation educators. Of course, I'm going to plug our website. Visit www.iercd.org.
So you'll see that sound, that was a trend that was going around. And so we were able to hop on the trend and incorporate it into our messaging. And I thought that was just a really fun way to do it. All right. Oops. Okay. So now that we have a better understanding of the different types of social media that are available, let's talk about goals that will help you with focus and direction. Having a strategic approach really helps. So here at IERCD, we generally try to create content that meets one or more of the following goals. So inform residents of relevant programs and offerings, create awareness of your district's value to the community and environment, highlight partnerships and bring awareness of other efforts in your region, engage elected officials in understanding the value that your district has to their residents, and strengthen your district's public image. All of these together bring consistency and authenticity to our posts, but they also help us figure out what to post. And I like to think of social media development. It's being done in inches. You know, it's slow. You work hard on it, but it does happen. So I just highlighted the first couple letters of each one, inches. It's an easy way to remember it. Like I said, that really helps define what we plan to post and how we make it. So these objectives as well have been incredibly useful when figuring out what to post. We may start with an image and have no idea how to fit it into social media, but once we start answering these questions, it all really starts to come together and fit into those goals that were on the last slide. So always think of the who, what, where, when, why, and how. Who's your audience? What's your message? Where in our district or your district are certain programs taking place? When are relevant programs being offered? Why do you want to communicate this to the community? Like, what's the benefit? And how do you want to distribute your message? Once you start answering these questions as you're looking at photos that you've taken, it really all starts to come together. All right, now let's dive into some tips and tricks that'll help you effectively manage your social media. I'll just put them all up right now. The first thing to consider is consistent branding. For example, if you create something that you just know, like you know that it's going to get a lot of shares, like especially like event flyers, you always want to make sure to throw your logo on there so people can track it back to the source. Another important aspect of consistent branding is establishing a consistent tone or unique district voice that reflects your district's values. Friendly and informative is always a good starting point. And adding to that, it's always a great idea, regardless of how many people may or may not be contributing to your social media, to always have one designated person that posts it. This person will edit the post and make sure it has that consistent district voice. And it just makes your entire online presence just so much more cohesive and less like a patchwork of different people posting. One other thing, don't be afraid to diversify your content and mix it up. Offer a blend of informative updates, engaging content, and promotional material to keep your audience engaged and interested. That includes incorporating the occasional social media holiday. Social media holidays are the perfect opportunity to highlight various programs, and they're really easy to get ahead of with a really quick Google. So when you have a moment, when you have time later on today, try searching like on Google environmental holidays or natural resource focused social media holidays or just social media holidays in general. You're bound to find something because there are entire websites that are dedicated solely to collecting these dates for you to look at. For example, did you know that Monday, this coming Monday the 18th, is Global Recycling Day, and that Tuesday is actually National Ag Day? Those are some things to look forward to. Get your post ready, people. All right, another thing to note, engagement is key. Actively engaging with your followers by responding to comments and messages. Show people that you value their input and their interaction. This is something, it is optional, like Anne was mentioning, you could mute or block comments and turn them off entirely, but I have found them very useful. Take the time to see what kind of posts do well and which ones don't, so that you can better understand your audience and tailor your content to resonate with them effectively. But also remember not to totally bombard people with posts. I know personally, I know there's a lot of pressure to post, but you really don't want to be posting either a ton of posts like every single day or post like bad, blurry pictures. This really turns people off. It gives them post fatigue. It'll make them tune you out and unfollow you. So you'll really be missing out on some valuable connections there. So make sure, quality over quantity. Take your time. Really think about how this post fits into those goals and objectives that you might come up with. Everyone here should consider switching to a business account if they haven't already. This opens up a whole world of possibilities, and it allows you to schedule posts in advance, access analytics, and just measure the overall effectiveness of your social media strategy. I can't recommend that enough. Two final notes, pay attention to grammar and spelling and make sure to keep it professional. It really goes a long way in enhancing your credibility if you're using proper spelling, grammar, punctuation, all of that. And finally, make sure that everything you post, like even the fun things, make sure they're relevant to your district and your operations and what you actually do. All right. As promised, I do want to close our discussion by proving that you are all beautiful, wonderful people with artistic eyes. So please pull out your phones again. Hopefully you left that tab open, but if not, the QR code is back in the corner down there, and that link is still the same. It's still in the chat. You should still be looking at that last question until I change the slide here in a second. But before I do that, I do want you to look at these two photos and think about what makes them engaging. What draws you into these or keeps you interested? Like, what makes you like them? While you're thinking of that, I want you to think of one word that sums up your thoughts. And I'll give you a moment before I activate the interactive part. Just take a minute, look at these two pictures. This next question, I have 30 seconds on the clock for you to answer. And I guess the first 25 people that get their responses in are the lucky ones. So just, I'll give you a few more seconds. Look at these. What makes them engaging? And now I'm going to change the slide. Your phone screen or your computer screen, whatever you're joining on for the poll. Ooh, okay. All right. Answers are coming in. And you'll notice the more that people answer a certain word, the bigger it is. So a lot of people are saying scale and contrast. We have 10 more seconds on the clock. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The poll is closed. All right. We have fascinating, snake, texture, diversity, color, perceptive, small, boot, colors, scale, tiny, contrast, comparison, perspective, and detail. You guys are right. People like to see close-up shots. They can include pictures of someone's hands as they're planting natives or holding a small animal, close-ups of flowers, bugs, etc. This first picture, it really shows scale because that penny is next to that gold-spotted oak borer exit hole. You can see how tiny it is. The second picture is actually Artemisia californica. It's California sagebrush, which is found here pretty widely throughout Southern California. When you look at it though, when you're just walking around, it does not look like that. That is taken using a macro camera. No one has to have a macro camera. I just thought this was a really cool, beautiful picture to share. This Blainesville horned lizard, it's being held by a biologist. Make sure you note that when you post it. Don't pick up wildlife, everyone. This is, a professional. But you can really see how tiny and cute he is because he's in someone's hand, and you can see the scales and the colors up close. And then we have some milkweed seed right there, and those are usually very tiny, and it's really fun for people to get close-up shots of that. So yes, the detail, the scale, the smallness, it's really nice for people to look at. As with everything, the opposite of some stuff that you should do, there's also some don'ts. So you really don't want to post pictures where the photos with the subject, pictures where the subject is so far away that it can't be seen, or where it's unclear what the viewer is really supposed to be looking at, or if they're just blurry photos in general. So that first picture was a really exciting mulch delivery on a farm. But it's just a pile of mulch. There are so many ways that picture could have been more engaging. We could have had someone excitedly, standing on the mulch or shoveling it out and spreading it. But no, it's just a picture of mulch. People are not going to want to look at that. The second picture is a blurry plant. I don't think I have to explain why that's not a good photo. And the third picture is a burrowing owl burrow. And I actually zoomed this picture in so you can see the hole better, but when it was sent to me, when staff wanted to post it, it was not clear at all that that was the focus of the shot. And there is an exception, because if someone sent this burrowing owl picture, the burrow hole picture, and they had like a burrowing owl in the following picture, or, a close-up of the hole after, that would have been great. So the exception to that rule is if you include an additional photo. So for example, a photo of a plant in a habitat is a good picture as long as you include an additional photo of that plant up close. And this applies to everything, but this plant is just an example. So this picture of this field, people can look at it and not know exactly what they're looking at. Like, oh, maybe they'll think it's a pretty field. Maybe they'll think, oh, is that Sahara mustard? Is that gold fields? What are those? But then upon closer inspection, you'll see it's actually stinknet, which is a really invasive plant that we do not want here in Southern California. And this is how you identify it. You know, it's a very close-up shot. It's not just far away. They can see the detail. So if you combine those two photos, there's always a way to make a photo worthy of being posted on social media. Another exception is that people really like to see beautiful or sometimes shocking landscapes. Here in California, we got the super bloom a couple years ago. We also experienced a few fires. There's actually Mandy right there walking along the El Dorado fire, the burn area, and then we have the Blue Cut fire there. Landscape photos of like distant mountains are always beautiful, flower fields, or people out in the field working. That's always really nice. All right, your screen, it should still have the last question. Don't respond just yet, but we're gonna take a look at these pictures once again, and we're gonna think, what makes these images engaging? I'll give you a couple seconds to look at it. We have Adrian Poloni here measuring forest floor stuff for forestry. We have some students here using handheld microscopes, looking at trees. And we have our restoration ecologist, Erin Eccles, leading a group of Mountains Foundation Conservation Corps folks. All right, so if you still have that link open, the first 25 people to get your responses in, there's gonna be 30 seconds on the clock starting now. Okay, so go ahead and start responding and we'll see what everyone thinks. People, activity, action, yes. Depth, citizen, hands, participation, science. This is awesome. Thank you guys so much for participating. Okay, we have, all right, let's see. So action, people, engagement, those are all our main responses. And once again, you guys are right. People like to see people working. So these can include photos of someone holding up plants or tools, walking through a field, or observing a site. People just love to see people. We're social animals at the end of the day, right? So here are some more examples of that. And we're gonna look at some more pictures. What makes these ones different from the last ones that we looked at? So your question on your screen should not have changed yet, but I'm gonna give you a few moments to look at these pictures. We have a student planting, we have some volunteers planting, we have a little boy using his very first bird field guide, we have someone raking, we have people holding some fruit, someone out in the field, she's holding a shovel. What makes these images engaging? All right, 30 seconds on the clock, starting now. Go ahead and start sending your responses in. Smiles, fun, joy, I see a little smiley face, excitement, community, engagement, diversity, learning, achievable, emotion. I see a lot of people are responding smiles. That's why it's so big. 2 more seconds. The poll is closed. All right. You guys are right. People like to see faces. A smile can really go a long way for sharing your message. And these can include employee, volunteer, and partner faces. So here we have more smiling folks, just happy to be here, happy to work in conservation, happy to do what they're doing. And you guys are absolutely right. People like to see smiling faces. And these are obviously much more posed than the ones where people are working, you know. So you can always feel free when you're in the field or you're working with someone, be like, hey, can I snap a quick picture? And people are always willing to oblige. And if they're not, be like, okay, thanks anyways. All right, last one. What makes these images engaging? I'm sure this one's very obvious, but yeah, I'll give you a few seconds to look at these. We got a Pacific tree frog, we got some goats, we got a monarch, and 30 seconds on the clock starting now. Go ahead and get your last responses in. So animals, charismatic, close-up, beauty, colorful, natural, nature, creatures, life, contrast. 2 more seconds and the poll is closed. It looks like a lot of people responded with animals, and you guys are absolutely correct. People like to see animals. This is a really good opportunity to showcase what animals are in your service area and how your work might benefit them. So yeah, people like to see animals, and you guys did absolutely great. You guys all know what looks good. I'm sure you're gonna go out there and post some amazing pictures online. If you have any questions, this is my contact info right here. Feel free to take a screenshot or a picture, or this presentation will be sent out later. And thank you so much. I can take some questions if anyone wants, or we can just leave it there.
Nice job, Crystal. Round of applause.
Thank you.
One question did come in that's a really good one, is photo releases. How are you doing that?
Yes, so especially in the case of minors, we always check in with their parents first and have them sign a photo release waiver. If we do not get one, we do not post the picture, and in most cases, we try not to take the photo at all. There is some small workarounds where if say you're in a classroom with children, really only take the pictures of their hands or the back of their heads where you can't identify the child in particular. But yeah, that's a good question.
If no one else has anything right now, I also had a comment just when people look at Crystal's presentation afterwards when we sent it out, is notice she branded throughout. Remember I was saying at the beginning, I had no idea how much we needed Crystal until she came on. But her font, like, Crystal, will you put your last slide up again?
Oh yeah, of course.
Just if you notice, like throughout her presentation, she subtly, it's just something I don't really, I think, spend a lot of time thinking about, but like mimicking colors, like trying to pull in imagery, like just things that she does that are very I don't know, for her probably, obvious. I think easy things for everyone to incorporate, that does make it more pleasant to look at or more engaging.
Yeah, so all of the colors used in this presentation are colors from our logo. And even that QR code, even though it's not our entire logo, it's using the colors from the logo. And actually, if you scan that really quick, you can sign up for our newsletter. You can follow us on our current social media platforms. They're all linked to that. So that's also a really good resource to have.
Sarah, I don't know if I missed anything in the chat. Looks like there were a couple of things.
There was a question about photo releases and if there is a template or something that you all use within your district.
Yeah, we have language that we can, for sure, we can share. And then I think Crystal's tips are really good. We even, like, I think as long as, Crystal, you mentioned you can't recognize the child, you can't see their face. So we did take pictures of kids doing a butterfly craft, and the butterfly craft covered their face, so we could use the picture. But I think our advice about this comes from having all these unusable pictures. So we were like, oh, and Crystal, what did you just tell me recently? That our photo waiver only covers us. So I think you've done photo waiver, or you've done collaborative work with other people. And I think you mentioned to me, like, I think the attorney told you, and maybe Anne can weigh in on this, you're not allowed to like send them your whole photo group if they don't have a waiver, right? Like our waiver doesn't cover them.
I can give a bit more context, and what I will say, like a broken record, is it actually varies a bit state to state. So just be careful about making sure. And if you just Google photo release law and the name of your state, typically you'll get some good resources. But yeah, I mean, if you're doing an event, I think best practice is to have, like, say you're doing an event where people are checking in, have them sign in, and then at the same time say if you'd like to be released if you'd like to have your photo used, do we have permission to take your photos? Do we specifically not have permission to take your photos? I'd say if you can sort of combine all that into one release, like when they're signing into the event or that kind of thing, that's a successful way to do it, and just have them kind of check a box or sign a form that says that they allow to have their photo released. But as far as the specific language to use in a release, I would recommend checking state guidelines. And I know there are tons of resources online, good templates, state to state.
Thanks, Anne. So there was another question about QR codes. So we use Canva in my district. It's a free resource, canva.com. And you can sign up for a pro version if you want, which I think is relatively inexpensive, and you can create them there. Or there are a lot of, if you type in QR code free, there are a lot of resources out there that allow you to create one for your own marketing use, or to link to events or things like that. What else? Let's see. Canva gives discounts for 501c3s, someone says, so that's awesome. Yeah, so I think we will try and put together, maybe Mandy and I will work on putting together some resources for this, and we can put those on the website too, as far as just maybe some links to some different things. And if we have any templates or things like that, we can absolutely put some of that together. And it looks like, how long is too long for an Instagram post? That's a good question. I've seen some really long ones.
Yeah,
This is
Crystal,
where-
how long?
This is where the different, platforms kind of differ. Like for Facebook, you could write a little bit longer, but if you're going to be cross-posting, for Instagram, if people have to scroll to read the whole thing, it's too long. And I'm pretty sure that Instagram has a caption limit as well.
I had a question on resharing other people's posts, partners, or like the Farmer's Almanac. What are the guidelines for those?
I think this is a good and question, but from my understanding, if they post it, that's a publicly available, it's public. And so if you share it, it's still attached to them because it'll say like shared from Farmer's Almanac. But Anne, I don't know if you want to weigh in on that.
Yes, that's a good point. And I saw in one of your screenshots, I should have brought that up in my presentation, but you did include something where you said, if you share from someone else's page. Yes, that's a great resource. And like you said, because it still clearly shows it's coming from another page, but you as, the district have directly reshared it to your page, it's not the same as, for example, letting a different entity post on your page. So I always support sharing relevant posts from other pages. No issue with that. But be aware, if it's part of your social media page at that point, it could also be part of anything you have to disclose in terms of records requests or things like that. But no legal issue with sharing another, public post to your district's page.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Sarah, do you think
Okay.
that we're done with the chat questions, or there are more?
Yeah, so I think, and just in the interest of time, there's a couple more about just jumping on some of the trending things like memes, and even the of course I'm a, or I am a, of course I do XYZ. I think those fall back on some of your policies and what is relevant to your district, and being careful with some of that. Photo credits is another question. Obviously, always give credit to whomever is taking your photos. And so that you're recognizing that, even if it is a staff person, make sure that you are putting in there something about photo buy, and that you're not using photos that are copyrighted. You can get yourself into some trouble there on some of the platforms and be flagged for some of that. So just be careful with that. I think that's about it. And if there are more questions and you want to send us some emails, you most certainly can. There's a contact us on the website, ncdea.us. And we can put together some resources or create a touch point for you to put you in touch with someone who can answer those questions. We're more than happy to do that. And like Mandy said, we are recording, so this will be posted along with the presentations, and we'll make sure to get that out to everyone. And we will address our limits on the attendees for next month. So
Sorry, that was
have
my
to make
fault.
sure that
Not Sarah's fault. That was my fault.
no, it's a great problem to have though, that we have that many people. So yeah, Mandy, if you have any closing thoughts.
My only thought, I saw someone put in the chat, I think the National Park Service is a great social media account to follow. And then I may be biased, but I think Crystal just does amazing work. And so, you know, you can learn more about our district in Southern California, you know, is one thing, but just seeing examples of how she like showcases things that could otherwise come across as kind of boring is cool. So sometimes for me, I just like to look at other people's accounts and get ideas that way. And Crystal, it looks like you unmuted for a minute. Did you have something?
Oh, I just want to echo the National Park Service has an amazing, like I was saying, that we should all find our district voice. Their voice is hilarious.
Wonderful. And I just want to say thank you. Sarah and I have been thinking, you know, we're together, we were like, how can we make something that is somewhat useful considering the insane range of size of districts, number of employees, areas of focus, and we're trying to hit on topics that have applications that are really broad. This is obviously one. And then again, I know I already said this like 10 times today, but if you go to ncda.us and take our employee survey, that is a big part of that survey. Like, what do you want help with? What would you like to see? And then we will structure speaker invites. And I don't know, I feel like Anne and Crystal set a really high bar. So I hope we get there for future workshops, but we just appreciate people taking time on a Friday. Thanks for coming today, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. And please, I'm so sorry again about the audio. Please feel free to reach out to me by email or give me a call if you had questions about things you couldn't hear. The slides will go out. They will have my email attached to them. Sincere apologies about that. And please feel free to reach out to me.
You made up for it in your amazing presentation.
I did my best.
Perfect.
Yes. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.